Noah's Ark. During Genesis, in the days when the earth was filled with violence and corruption, God looked upon his creation and humanity, and he was grieved. Yet among all people, Noah was found to be righteous. God instructed him to build an ark of gopher wood, 3 stories high, sealed with pitch to preserve life through the coming flood. Into it came Noah, his family, and pairs of every living domesticated creature, as rain fell for 40 days and 40 nights. The waters covered the mountains until all was silent. Then, after months adrift, the ark rested on the mountain Ararat. Noah sent forth a raven, then a dove. When the dove returned with an olive branch, he knew the earth was renewed. God sent a rainbow in the sky as a covenant, promising never again to destroy the world by flood. The moral: he who builds his vessel upon wisdom, not fear, will endure every flood. For the true ark is the awakened initiate, and the deluge but the washing away of illusion. Howdy y'all, Bristol here. Thanks for clicking the video. This is Noah's Ark and the multi-dimensional God. Noah's Ark's one of the best stories in the Bible that one can read and find comfort during destructive, chaotic times in their life. And not only that, but the multi-dimensional, living, breathing, quantum aspect of this story, as well as the Bible, it really kind of hones in on how mystical and majestic this document is. The story of Christ can also reflect and mirror a lot of Noah's Ark principles. And when I'm talking about this, a lot of the key points here is that these are allegorical concepts rather than being people in the flesh. They can be related to people in the flesh, don't get me wrong, but the allegory and the picture that is painted by the words and really the occult wording of it as well, really symbolizes the initiatory aspect, just like in secret societies, and how you're born in this earth with a primordial wound of controlling divine knowledge, and that separation of spirit and matter as your birth through the Visca Pisces is your initiation into this world. You are an initiate when you are born. And a lot of these concepts of the Bible is how the elite and influential shot callers, secret societies, this is how they portray it and observe it. So we will focus more so on Iapetos, Japheth, Jupiter, and really connecting all these aspects, lining up so much expansion, the quality of Jupiter. We're going to line up a lot of the expansive, courageous, driving willpower that preserved humanity and still preserves a lot of the skeletons of tradition so that we can hang our meat of culture onto. So let us begin. All right. So with that being said, I'm going to stick with the standard timeline, 10,000 BC, Ice Age ends, sea levels rise, shit starts happening, and whether or not, whether or not the timeline is right, we're going with this perspective. I will start with the alleged Younger Dryas impact, which is the potential celestial event that caused the destruction 12,900 years ago, roughly. Some have proposed that this event caused biomass burning and impact winter that destabilized the Atlantic conveyor and triggered abrupt climate change. That's the bare bones of it. That can also allude to the myth of Phaeton, which I opened the previous White Origins video with. Phaeton being the son of Helios, he gets encouraged by his mother to ask his father Helios to be able to chariot the reins, so to speak, and pretty much just be in the spot of Helios. Helios is the sun. The chariot carries the sun on its trajectory pathway along the zodiac that it follows. So he goes up and asks him, "Hey, can I ride the chariot, Dad?" And Helios, who's very reluctant, he says, "Sure." And boy, it's like taking a guy who rides a fucking tricycle and throw him in a damn top fuel dragster. He can't pilot it. He burns the earth by flying too close, and then he freezes it by going way too far out. Eventually, he's struck down to earth where he falls into the river Eridanus, and that's basically it. Helios has to he's got to hijack the reins and get the shit back straightened up. But this is an interesting myth to behold. And the fact that, the Younger Dryas impact, if it did happen, this is an interesting perspective. Or it could be just something that the Greeks were experiencing during their time. Who knows? But again, let's stick with the perspective we're on. So we're going with the biblical Noah, as well as the Greek Noah, who is Deucalion, and they both are the same. I'm just going to mention extra Greek characters because the concepts, not the don't think of these as beings, think of these as concepts of reality itself. Especially Prometheus, especially Iapetus. When I say we came from Jupiter, it's not like there's a Jupiter gene and we just, possess it. It's not that. It's allegory. It's conceptual. Just like in the Bible, where God warns Noah, as man is corrupt, to build an ark. An ark is literally just a box to store valuables. That is all it means. And that can be anything. It could be a boat. It could be anything. But again, the boat is more metaphorical. Deucalion, however you want to pronounce his name, he's the Greek Noah. Zeus warns Deucalion. But how does he do it? Prometheus steals the fire, the spark, from Zeus. According to their mythology, Deucalion is gifted with this so that he can preserve himself, his family, his animals, and then continue to rebuild and expand upon a chaotic and destructive event. One key word I will say here is syncretism. And syncretism is simply the practice of combining different beliefs and schools of thought. So I'm syncretizing Noah and Deucalion. Every layer to the myths is a reference physically, mentally, and spiritually. Even when I say physically, mental, spiritual, that is earth, air, fire, and emotional, water. And really, water also acts as the formative matrix for reality itself. The water's above, the water's below. I mean, it's literally everything is water. So the time frame that we're working with here, before we progress, if if indeed this did occur 12,900 years ago, this is simply showing you the age of Virgo transitioning into the age of Leo, zodiacally speaking. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, what I mean simply is the age of Virgo. We are currently in the age of Pisces, probably transitioning to the age of Aquarius. If we haven't already, it's going to be within the next 100 years. And with that being said, the indicator of Pisces and the age of Pisces, a lot of people have magnets and stickers on their cars of a fish with a crucifix in it. That is symbolizing that Christ the Redeemer, throughout this age of Pisces, has been the central figurehead for the belief systems of this age. You know, he's kind of like, you know, Baal during the age of Taurus, or the age of Cancer. It would be like more lunar goddess. But in any case, and that Visca Pisces birthing, that rebirth illusion there is pretty intense when you think about it. But Virgo and the age of Virgo as a zodiacal sign is the quiet mercurial expression. It is analytical, it is detailed, or very organized. And in the shadow, it can be very hyper-perfectionist and very anal on that, for lack of a better word. The opposite of Virgo is Pisces, which is dreamy, illusion, mystical, teaching, guide, Christ, Christ-like qualities. You know, that walking on water that basically is holding yourself above the chaos, above the matrix itself. And so when we see this, think of it like the hourglass. So you have a top level Pisces, and then you have the bottom level Virgo, okay? I'm a midheaven Pisces. I see Virgo, and I have Jupiter retrograde Virgo. So this is actually pretty reflective of me. But the Pisces, the dreamy, illusionary, Neptunian, Jupiterian aspects, because it's, also philosophy, like Sagittarius, but just more mystical, poetic. Filtering that, and it hits that center point where it then crosses into Virgo. And so that alchemizing point of taking that mysticism, illusion, almost shamanic way of perceiving things, and alchemizing it into a detailed, fact-checked, organized, analytical, grounded to earth perspective. That is what Virgo is. It grounds the illusion. It grounds the mysticism. It turns the mysticism, the dreams, the illusion into concrete, three-dimensional reality, or an application of such. Virgo is an earth sign, and it's resemblant of the Virgin carrying out the harvests of the growing season. Remember, fall and Virgo technically is the second spring. Taurus, whereas Taurus is, the springtime, ran by Venus, so we see that fertility, the beauty of the earth, the poetry of the earth, the spiritual expression into matter. Example of spiritual expression into matter is Fibonacci sequence in plants. And so with that being said, Virgo illustrates the great mother, Mother Gaia, Mother Earth, fertility. And I have wrote here, pre-flood matriarchal age, quiet mercurial expression, and when I say lunarian, it's more of a feminine aspect. Feminine meaning like intuitive, instinctual. Transitioning from that, the feminine, even though it is ruled by Mercury, Virgo is ruled by Mercury, that feminine lunarian aspect, we then transfer that into the age of Leo. Leo is the solar king. The sun rules Leo. So anybody born a Leo automatically has the sun, their ruler, in their sign. So they have an advantage. You know, Leos are expressive, they're creative, they're bold. You know, think of it like if they're a fire sign, so they are expansive, fertile. Since, you know, think of fire is expansive. You know, in California, shit, it ain't just one brush fire, son. The whole damn city's getting lit up pretty much. So fire just spreads. And like its opposite, water, if water is allowed to run and expand, it will. You know, if water, think of astrologically, if water is boxed in, that's like Saturn in Pisces. Rigid, restricted, just You ain't flowing anywhere. I have you restricted. A dam is kind of like a Saturnian aspect if you think about it. But when you allow water to run, it expands and it's fertile. Just like the upside down triangle to the right side up triangle of fire. The fire, the masculine triangle, water, the feminine triangle. And both of them symbolize creative, reproductive power. You know, the upside down the triangle like this. You've got, when it's like that, the bottom is the testes, the phallus is the head. When it's like this, it's the ovaries and the birth canal. And then right there at the point, the Visca Pisces. Since it's a fire sign, also like to throw since it is a fire sign, think of a Leo as like the one who wants to jump about and showboat and, you know, really just, whereas an Aries just knuckles up and fucking goes at it. You know? And a Sagittarius fire sign just kind of at a distance just dots you up and keeps you, you know, on your toes and like that. But the Leo is just the creative, bold expression. Robert Plant, singer of Led Zeppelin, he's a Leo. He's got the mane. He roars. The aspects are there. Leo symbolizes the solar king, masculine authority, age of divine rulership, creative, bold expression, masculine influence, patriarchal societies. Thus, the flood I have wrote here is a death of the mother age and the rise of the solar patriarchal age. And this shift would have happened around 11,000 BCE according to our given timeline. Esoterically, it mirrors a shift from lunar, feminine consciousness, instinct, intuition, fertility, to solar consciousness, reason, law, and will, courage, strength, things of that nature. Noah can be thought of three-dimensionally as the solar survivor, carrying the spark of the new sun or flame into a renewed world. Prometheus is that spark. Iapetos, the father of Prometheus, who is also Japheth Jupiter. Iapetos is known as the piercer. So basically that dividing line, that axis, that piercing axis that allows the spark of the divine flame, of the Promethean flame from Zeus, like a thunderbolt, strikes us. And that causes expansion. Think of the lightning bolt and the piercer as the eureka moment, you know, every day when you're trying to figure something out. And all of a sudden, I mean, it's literally like, bing! That piercing is the connection between two realms. And that eureka moment from the zap causing the spark within the temple of your mind allows for that expansion. Oh my goodness. So in this time frame, we know Virgo, quiet, feminine, but very hardworking. Leo, bold, regal, creative, expressive, fertile. This can also be interpreted as the end of an era that could possibly have been dominated by nature fertility cults and the beginnings of solar patriarchal priestly civilizations, the world of kings, law, and divine order. This narrative is strangely present to the return of Caucasians to America long after the flood and coming into conflict with those still executing, quote, old age traditions. Okay, so remember when I've been saying Noah has gone across the waters with his sons and their wives, okay? We all know that story. The warning to Noah, we're going to get to this. The warning to Noah, or Deucalion, from Zeus, Jupiter, Yahweh, whatever you want to call him, Jehovah, Adonai. The warning caused the expansion. The warning was that eureka divine spark. And the people during this age, if the Younger Dryas impact, if the climate change and the rising of the waters and all this shit is true, put ourselves in the perspective of people living in the age of Virgo observing this for real. They would have been looking around going, why are these waters rising? Like this river is getting higher. Why are these birds in mass migratory flocks like running away from that side and going over, and they're all going over here? Like, what is going on? And somebody had the sense, the knower, interesting, the knowing, had the sense to go, I think some shit's about to happen. Forgetting the boat. Let's take the boat out, that preservation of the peoples, the seeds, their animals, and everything else, that comes from the allegorical concept of Iapetos, Prometheus, Jupiter. And this is kind of the vibrational energies that are sent to us from, these planetary bodies that have their differential attributes. They're seeing this, they're seeing the mass migration, they realize there's something that's going to happen. We got to just maintain ourselves here. And so they do. If we want to go with the building of the ark, escaping Atlantis, or escaping one land and going to the other, then this is a perfect example. The waters, the matrix and themselves, Zeus battling Poseidon, Neptune, that concept, the battling of a serpent water god as this stuff happens, this stretches through other cultures as well. But in the three-dimensional approach that I'm taking with this perspective, Noah, the leader, the great preserver of mankind, the concept of that was under great leadership of humans, their tribes, their communities, and foresight, the creative foresight to preserve their peoples, their seeds, and their domesticated animals, which means, the clean and unclean animals being brought to the boat. These three sons represented potentially three different groups of humanity, of communities, of tribes that truly got over a devastating cataclysm, landed on a mountain because there's truly some mountain symbolism associated with Jupiter and deities like Jupiter, landed on a mountain and thus when the waters receded, humanity was able to expand more so, and if it wasn't for that iapetos piercing divine spark to the divine flame, the thunderbolt to lead to the spark, just like the thunderbolt to the oak tree, guys, if it wasn't for that, people wouldn't be here today. And that's truly the bare bones, stone cold anthropological take on that. So, especially the Caucasian peoples. So, that's that on the Noah's Ark, three-dimensional anthropological take. Also, I would like to add Prometheus and the serpent, Nahash, as well as Lucifer. In my opinion, they all allude to an archetypal light bearer. Even Jesus Christ himself is a light bearer. And I think there's a hypnosis on the people to think that one thing is evil so they don't truly understand what it means. And furthermore, the concept of keeping people asleep and really just having them mock surface level beliefs and not know the true deeper meanings of things, I think allows for a much easier control of society. And Jupiter, here it comes. It allows those who are the shot callers to have more expansion for their cause. See, it's all in it's Eric Clapton said it best, man. It's in the way that you use it. These principles, these things are not evil. Lucifer is not evil. Christianity can be used for evil. It's not a purely holy thing if we're wanting to be honest, if it's filtered and misused. So it's one thing to note there and keep in mind. Now we know that there's mention of 40 days, 40 nights, and that is entirely symbolic. Let's go over some other things in regards to that. 40 is a sacred period of transition or purification, not a precise count, so it's numerological. Moses fasted 40 days on Sinai before receiving the law. The Israelites wandered 40 years in the wilderness. Jesus fasted 40 days in the desert before beginning his ministry. 40 was a round number, meaning a generation or a complete cycle of trial and renewal in the ancient Near East. In Noah's context, it marks the full completion of a purgative process, not simply meteorology. And so, in Hermetic traditions, 40 is tied to Mercury and the process of inner purification, death to the lower nature, rebirth to divine consciousness, basically commanding the animal instincts like we see in a lot of art from that time where they're holding lions or snakes. One is commanding the lower mind, the more animalistic form, while the other one is controlling the divine wisdom and not letting it slither away and get out of hand. The ark basically can also be constructed, instead of a boat, think of it, the waters of the matrix of life itself. And the ark is the body, mind and body, spirit, and you are protecting of that during a chaotic, disruptive time, usually. This offers some insight and reflection on how you have to be your own leader. Again, in thinking of a macro sense, how if we're taking groups of people from a land and expanding upon another as a result of great cataclysms, this is that protector of human vitality, our peoples, and reestablishing ourselves after chaos. So it's beautiful symbolism, man. It really is. And so 40 days, 40 nights alludes to cosmic initiation and transformation, rebirth, and the cycle of all those. So, here are some more quick notes. Some notes on Noah's age and how they reflect cosmology rather than biology. Also, how they reflect symbolic numerology. But one of the crossroads here is people thinking of solar years, like Noah living to 950 years lifetime. I don't believe that at all. This is more lunarian. The ancients probably looked at the years as the lunar cycle, so the month. So Noah would have been 79 years old by the time he died. So, like the antediluvian kings of Mesopotamian tradition, the ages of such depictions represent astronomical ages / calendrical cycles. The system was inherited and recast as lifespans of patriarchs. Here is what the alleged age of Noah could possibly encode. Numerologically speaking, he lived 950 years. So we reduced that to a single digit. 9 plus 5 plus 0, which equals 14, which then reduces to 5, which is the number of grace, renewal, and life. Now, there are two perspectives on this. Mercury rules number 5, communication, intellect, adaptability. Jupiter rules number 3, and it enhances number 5 with growth, encouraging a broader perspective. Mars rules 9, but Neptune gives the deeper spiritual completion of depth by attaching itself to the number 9 as well. Mars takes action and is fiery. 5 is the essence, and it's that of travel, action, and movement. It adds life to the rigidity and practicality and stable essence from number 4, and is considered to be the first manifestation of spirit, showing a correlation to the Promethean flame taken from Zeus and gifted to humanity. So we see that Jupiter connection there in 5. Huge spiritual growth happened and was happening to humanity. This was the Promethean flame's expansion expressed through humanity. The flame wouldn't exist without Jupiter to begin with. 5 is consistent with Noah as a preserver of creation, life, and the renewal / expansion after dissolution. Internally, externally, macro, micro. 9, as we said, is ruled by Mars, but Neptune represents attainment, completion, and the closure of a cycle. It is spiritual life matter containing the 3 as a pure idea and the 6 as an organized material reality. Together, 9 and 5 within Noah's age symbolize the end of one world and the creation / beginning of another. His age, when the flood started, was 600. 6 is the number of solar creation. Genesis, 6 days to create, resting on the 7th. The 6th house in astrology is Virgo. 6, in essence, can show processions of spirit in matter through its expressions through honeycombs and the Fibonacci sequence that we see all over nature. This can be seen as, like Virgo, a very practical, organized way that spirit is connected to matter. And as I have stated previously, this is during the age of Leo when he has to set sail, conceptually speaking. He is the symbolizing bridge of the age of Virgo to the change in Leo. Also, with that being said, an interesting fact here. When we're talking about, the age of Leo, the rising of the sun, etc., etc., I have here the Sphinx in Egypt is representative of the occurrence of the welcoming of the astrological age of Leo. Half lion, half man, it faces due east toward the rising sun, showing their depiction of the processions, sunrise of the age of Leo. This could simply mean they understand that the sun rules Leo, or this could mean we are talking about thousands of years. Our people got here during that age of Leo, and it took all of that strength and courage of a lion to be able to do such. Okay, guys, so to do a quick myth recap on Deucalion and his marriage to Pyrrha, and how this is the actual Greek myth for Noah. Also, a quick side note before we get into the mythos of the Deucalion Pyrrha recap. Deucalion, Deukalion, or Deuc. So we see the Deu connection to like Zeus, Deus, and Alion, a lion or alien. So Duke is a leader or to command. Alion is a lion. So having that strength and courage, commanding like a lion during the age of Leo, or alien, foreigner. The foreign commander, the jury's out on that. So real quickly, Deucalion, son of Prometheus. Prometheus is the son of Iapetus. And Pyrrha, daughter of Epimetheus and Pandora, are the sole survivors of Zeus's flood. After the waters recede, they repopulate the world by casting stones behind them. Deucalion's stones become men, Pyrrha's become women. What this basically means is they are forgetting the old world in order to repopulate the new and expand upon it. So throwing behind them, these are humanity birthing in their shadow and in their trail. Their union is the rebirth of humanity, the fire of man and woman unity. And since Pyrrha is the fiery one, and her name literally translates to flame-colored or fire red, Deucalion, the son of Prometheus, son of the divine spark, sent by the piercer Iapetus, this marriage basically is, we can say, the marriage of that piercing spark that leads to the fire of human spirit causing expansion. All leading back to Jupiter. So the traditional symbolism right here says, flood is the cataclysm, destruction of old cycles and purification. We know water's a purifier. Deucalion is the child of foresight, Prometheus. So he's the concept of what happens after one attains foresight, forethought, and the reason that everything is preserved. The stones are humans, and these are the humans that are post-deluge, post-destruction, post-whatever chaos. This is the eternal soul hidden in inert matter, awakened by divine will, Prometheus, or in the marriage of Deucalion and Pyrrha. So, yes, the marriage can be seen as a union of principles that generate the new world, spark within man, the foresight and courage, the inner flame of the mind to set out anew. And that fiery principle, is also reflective biologically between man and woman to allow the expansion of genes. It is a union of spirit and flame, representing courage and catastrophe and the creative drive. Think of this again, just like we've been saying, this is one big initiation into a new world. The initiate, Deucalion, survives the flood of dissolution by clinging to the Promethean spark. He unites with the fiery soul to forge a new humanity. Masonically speaking, Manly P. Hall and Albert Pike both speak of fire as man's divine inheritance. Deucalion's lineage from Prometheus equals humanity's link to the divine flame. Pyrrha is the flame embodied, fertile, and creative. It's almost like a second Adam and Eve story, too. In Jungian terms, Deucalion is conscious foresight. Pyrrha is creative unconscious. Marriage of such is the birth of the new man. And I wrote here in my own in my kind of like a closing poem, man's marriage to the Promethean flame of knowledge, the power within, the fire of strength and courage in the worst of times, and the burning desire for creative, fertile expansion. And that's really what it is. It is an archetypal initiation after catastrophe, man uniting with fire, divine knowledge, courage, creativity to rebuild a purified, fertile world. And just like Noah, it is exactly the same. Now, interestingly enough, we're talking about the waters, the chaos of the waters. Iapetos was the actual ancient name for the Atlantic Ocean. And so it's very interesting, sailing across the Iapetos Ocean, the ocean that led to expansion is it's just weird that they would name it like that. The result of sailing across this ocean to lead to expansion, that piercing, dividing spirit from matter. Let's get into Noah and his sons, specifically just Noah and Japheth. Japheth being Iapetos, the piercer, Jupiter. Japheth in ancient Hebrew means Yephet, meaning God enlarges or God expands. Coming from Noah, Japheth coming from Noah. I have wrote here, Noah and Prometheus can be read as two mirrors, the culture bringer and his sons who scatter into distinct destinies. The ark is literally the womb protecting the precious flame within our people's seed or within humanity's perseverance during chaos. And an ark is the symbolic protector of the human spirit, of the human flame. I have wrote here, Noah, remembered for his drunkenness, mirrors Prometheus, who is punished for fire. Both bring gifts. Now, wine and fire are symbolically identical in the fact that they are the ferment of spirit, fire to liquid, liquid to fire. Alchemically giving the light to mortal vessels. His sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, echo the sons of Prometheus, Deucalion the survivor, renewal, Epimetheus the one who errs, Atlas the bearer of burden, showing how each branch of humanity inherits a different fragment of the Father's mixed gift, wisdom, folly, or burden. Getting back to the Leo and Virgo ages real fast. While still assuming, and I'm going to be reading from my notes, while still assuming we are in the transition from Virgo to Leo, how would their language have been interpreted? Meaning the language of those humans in that time. We didn't have writings, and if we did, they are long gone. To answer this, engravings, sketches, and tally marks on bone, stone, or wood would have been present, as these also were used to depict animals, seasons, trade, etc. Spoken language would have been an established thing, likely stemming from either Proto-Eurasiatic or Proto-Nostratic. Knowledge and tradition were preserved through ritual, chant, and mythical formulae. Codexes, quote-unquote, probably were literal human beings that maintained a deep shamanic presence, maintaining lore from stars, plants, animals, and law through recitation. Later, priestly classes draw on this mythic age, especially the Celtic Druids. Though the Druids are considered Iron Age, they represent an archetype, echoing these attributes and traditions now mostly lost in time. I'm going to fast forward because this will mirror and echo a lot of things that I have previously said. And this will echo a lot of observations that ancient humans were making as well. So, to carry on this story, I will now begin with the etymological background of Jupiter Skyfather worship. The earliest known articulation of Jupiter Skyfather worship was listed as Dios Pater, Father, Daylight, Sky God. Dios, or Dievas, means sky heaven, and Pater, Peter, meaning father. This early Proto-Indo-European sky god was symbolized as the bull. From Proto-Indo-European Dievas, cognate with the following: Proto-Hellenic Jupiter, Ancient Greek Zeupater, Father Zeus, Proto-Indo-Iranian Dios Peta, Proto-Indo-Aryan Jos Pita, Vedic Sanskrit Jos Peter, Proto-Italic Jus Pater. Descendants: Albanian Zoj, spelled Z-O-J-Z to English, sky lightning god, supreme being in Albanian. Greeks, Zeus, obviously. Latin, Jovis, Jove. And notice the similar sound to Yahweh, Yehovah. Jovis, Jove, Yahweh, Yehovah. Old Latin, Gispiter, from Proto-Italic Ziovis, Jove. Umbrian, and they had very interesting looking runes, the Umbrians did, Iopater. Extinct language spoken by the Umbri in the ancient Italian region of Umbria, related to the Oscans, formerly of South Italy. So, Divas, Jevas, Zuvas, that sound, that link, carries us into this right here. Divas, meaning heavenly shining bodies, exalted ones. And Indra, also Jupiter, is king of Divas in Hinduism. It is one of the terms used to indicate a deity in Hinduism, Divas. Diva, D-E-V-A, is masculine. Devi, D-E-V-I, is feminine. The word is cognate with the Latin Deus, God, and Greek Zeus. Indra is Jupiter in many aspects, as he too wields a thunderbolt and is ruler of the sky, heavens, thunder, lightning, and war. Very much equivalent to other deities such as Odin, Perun from Slavic, Perkunas, Lithuanian, Tyrannus, Celtic, and Thor, Norse. Jos, or Divas, or Jos Divas Peter, is the Rig Vedic sky deity. His consort is Pirti, Pirte, the earth goddess, and together they are the archetypal parents in the Rig Veda. Akasha means ether in traditional Hindu cosmology, and was adopted in Western occultism in the late 19th century. Akasha, Akasa, and Akashic, like Akashic records. Similarly, Akashic also means ethereal or cosmic records / cosmic memory, ethereal memory. In many modern Indo-Aryan languages and Dravidian languages, the corresponding word retains a generic meaning of ether. The Hindu god of Akasha is Divas, Dios. It simply means, quote, the basis of all things in the material world, the first element created. From ether, then air, from that fire, from which water, there forms the earth. As personification of the sky, Jos, Zivas, is a member of the 33 gods, or Tridasha, literally meaning 3 tens, which is a pantheon of Hindu deities of the current Manvatara, which in Hindu cosmology is a cyclical period of time identifying the duration, reign, or age of a Manu, the progenitor of mankind, aka the Hindu Noah. The Samhitas which are the oldest layer of text in the Vedas, dating as far back as 1500, maybe 2000 BCE, lists the 33 deities classified as devas as being 8 vasus, or deities of material elements, divas, dios, sky, agni, fire; 12 adityas, or personified deities, Indra, Aryaman, etc.; 11 rudras, referring to the forms of the god Rudra associated with Shiva; 2 ashvins, twin solar deities who are called Jivanapata, or grandsons of Jas, drawing heavy correlations to the following: Lithuanian Ziv Sunilai, sons of Divas, Skyfather, attached to the Ashvini, the Latvian Divadali, sons of Divs, Jivas, or the Greek Zioskori, the boys of Zeus, designated them as Castor and Pollux, the sign of Gemini. In the later Vedic texts, Prajapati, also Jupiter, is defined as literally, quote, Lord of the people, from Sanskrit, and is synonymously used with other gods such as Brahma and Indra, his role varying throughout the text as, quote, simply the one true creator of absolutely everything, end quote. 33 is the master number and is most notoriously used within occult societies such as Freemasonry as its highest attainable degree with an honorary stature. It is associated with nurturing, creativity, and spirituality in numerology. Jupiter rules the number 3, and 3 itself is about creativity, expansion, communication. Reducing 33 down to 6 gives us the ruling planet of Venus, which is more so about nurturing, harmony, responsibility, thus making 33 embody the mastery of energy, emotion, balance, creativity, and spirituality with an emphasis to teach and uplift. It makes even more sense now that the two planets visible in daylight, Jupiter and Venus, join in the number 33, are called heavenly shining bodies as divas, and together joined in union to bring in the Bronze Age, as Jupiter's element is tin and Venus's is copper, bringing more divine expansion to humanity. And we see that expansion in the Bronze Age, that expansion in tech, tools, weaponry, allowed for the militaristic Martian expression of the Jupiterian expression of expansion. One final note on some specifics within the Hindu scripts. Yayati is an emperor in Hindu tradition and is described as a Chandra Vamsa, or the lunar dynasty, which claims to be from Chandra, the lunar god, literally meaning shining/moon, who was born from Atri, son of Brahma. Yayati's father, King Nahusha, who upon Indra's, Jupiter's, loss of power, the Devas asked Nahusha to be the new Indra. He ruled over the 3 worlds with the guidance of sage Brihaspati for 100 years. Arrogance and pride became Nahusha's downfall, and wished to make Shachi, the wife of Indra, his wife. He made the Sapatrishi, 7 Vedic sages, convey his palanquin towards the mansion of Indra's wife, with the intent of seducing her, asking them to hasten by saying, Sarpa, Sarpa, which means move on, move on. He's asking the sages to hurry up. He was then cursed by the utterance of the 7 sages as a result of their anger towards his disrespect. They turned him into a serpent, and he fell down from the sky. The 7 sages represent the 7 stars in the Big Dipper, making the swastika, or the wheel in the sky, during the year's progress. They symbolize, as 7 sages, the immortal guides of cosmic order. This also translates to the 7 candles in the Bible. Now, the 7 candles more or less represent the planetary bodies, Mars, Venus, Saturn, rather than the 7 stars of the Big Dipper. But you see how it correlates. The swastika, the guiding of cosmic order, the constant of cosmic order. Both Nahusha and Nahash evoke the radiant, shining, elevated being archetypes, whose luminosity / divinity turns to degradation when spiritual light becomes, quote, self-absorbed and self-glorified. So we see that, in the light bearer narrative. We see that in the Satan narrative. Hell, I mean, him being Nahusha being cast down as a serpent. To tempt. Very interesting. Thus, across traditions, the serpent embodies the same moral: divine knowledge slithering away from he who holds it through misuse, turning wisdom into downfall. Yayati then becomes king in his place and rules the earth. He appoints his 4 younger brothers to rule the world's cardinal directions. As a result of his virtues, he was ascended to heaven, called Svarga, the realm ruled by Indra. In conclusion, this brings more attention to the Jupiterian connection throughout all of these previous languages, which now we will turn our attention to Iapetos, Japheth, Tivaz expressions, all sharing the same roots with Divas, Jospiter, Proto-Indo-European connections, as well as a few side quests we can talk about as well. The underlying Jupiter connection. Deus, Zeus, Zivas, Zeus, Divas, Devas have so far all alluded to ancient Skyfather Jupiterian worship throughout its etymology. This briefly brings us to the Lithuanian form of Jupiter named Perkūnas. He is the god of the sky, storms, fire, water, law, order, fertility, mountains, and oak trees. His symbol is the swastika. His day is Thursday, Thor's day, and his colors are red and white. His name is generally regarded as stemming from the Proto-Indo-European root per, to strike, or purkus, the oak. Attached to the nomenclature nos, master of. Side note, Dryas, from the younger Dryas impact, as previously mentioned, Dryas comes from the Greek meaning wood nymph or oak, and from the Pi root, deru, meaning to be firm, solid, or steadfast. Again, bringing us right back to Jupiter alignments, oak, steadfast, expansion. So how does this align? The striker of Perkūnas may reference to the spearhead lightning bolt, piercing the tall oak trees of the time. Humans observing these phenomena, taking inspiration from that divine power, seeing the oak tree retaining the latent embers caused by a lightning strike. Thus, the flame rekindles the essence of the Promethean flame within, honing in more fertile expansions within the family ancestral tree of humanity, and like the oak, continuing to grow, adapt, and expand amidst chaos and hardship. Again, that lightning, that Jupiter lightning bolt, that's like a spear point, the apetos, piercer. In more ways than one, the fractal dynamic of a 3-dimensional lightning bolt, resonating multidimensionally within our minds and within the realm itself. This leads us to the notion that the tree symbology is huge within Germanic mythology, and how Yggdrasil, the great tree, encompasses all of what we have discussed. The very act of producing fire through a strike paralleled in the belief that oak trees retain latent fire after being struck by the thunder god, may underscore the symbolic role of lightning. Also, his weapon is a mace named Mjolnir in the Baltic Old Norse traditions, personifying lightning, and is cognate with Mjolnir, Thor's hammer. To cap it off, Perkinus battles a multi-headed water serpent connecting to occult symbology we've previously discussed, including the narrative of the Hellenistic gods' triumphant victory over the alleged Atlantean gods. More importantly, the control of the chaotic waters to bring forth divine initiation. We have been talking about Devas, Jevas, Zuvas. Now we will turn to Tivas. Tiwaz. With obviously a similar sounding name as we have previously seen, Tivaz, or Tyr in Old Norse, is recognized as both a god in Germanic mythology, Mars, and a sun god to the Luwians, or an ancient group of languages by those within the Anatolian branch of the Indo-European language family. Both instances of these names stem from the Aryan Pi Divos, meaning celestial heavenly one. These names are both cognate with Zeus, Jupiter, and Tyr, and was a reflex of the male sky god of the Indo-European religion, Zeus Divas. In Bronze Age texts, Tiwaz is often referred to as father. His epithet, Tiwaz of the Oath, indicates he was an oath god. In this role, he received sacrifices of sheep, red meat, and bread. Its name can be written with the Sumerogram Dingur, their word in Sumerian for god or goddess, or with the ideogram Dios Sol, God Son. So how does Jupiter have a connection to the Mars energy of war? It's simple. Mars, Ares, is the son of Jupiter, Zeus. So think of that concept, again, not biological, let's think of it as a concept. Through expansion, we get the Martian, martial, march energy. Willpower, fiery, steadfast. Mars embodying masculine. Think of it, and Mars, the spearhead, the arrow point, Iapetos, the piercer, the Tiwaz rune, how it looks like the spearhead, all taking us back to that Atl tool, throwing the spear, gaining more distance, allowing for more effective hunting for the feeding of society. And just the image of the piercer, the arrow point, it's present on the Mars gender symbol. And the spearhead, the piercer, can also be a reference to male, creative, phallic power. A quick note on the Mars symbolism tying in with Venus. The piercing from source to allow the divine spirit into matter. No expansion without willpower, action, or sacrifice. The fiery drive from the spark of the Promethean flame and the lightning strike of Jupiter. Iapetos the piercer, or man itself, or source, is the circle. The circle is source. The arrow is the pierce that allows spirit to flow into matter and lead to expansion. The arrow symbolizes willpower and action from source, elevating oneself to expansion, or causing pure elevation into expansion. The arrow is willpower and action from source, which elevates to expansion. Echoing the seniority of Mars's father Jupiter, Iapetos, as well as Roman militaristic imagery of a shield and spear. It is also a male phallic creative power symbol, echoing the, quote, source causing the spirit to flow into matter through birth, thus expanding the tree through the fire of divinity. With the Venus symbol, both symbols allude to the divine alchemy of opposites and their marriage. Venus being the elements, air and earth, as ruler of both Libra and Taurus, alchemically marries its opposite, Mars being the elements, fire and water, as ruler of both Aries and Scorpio eagle, thus forming the cross of four elements, with the hidden fifth layer as the divine connection through matter. Both circles can be seen as, quote, source or, quote, spirit divine. And the fiery, expansive, piercing fertility of Mars's spear, receptive to the Visca Pisces of the triangle of Venus, create life. And like water from source within the womb, which the circle interprets as well for Venus, the watery matrix initiates new life, activating the Trinity, and like a water droplet, is separated from source through the Visca Pisces, or flowing down the bottom of the symbol of Venus, releasing itself into the watery matrix. Separated from source from the castration of heaven and matter, yet still gifted with the ever-present divine flame, connected from the piercer. The greatest gift to the creation of humanity is this eternal awareness of all of this. So the Mars Aries is the son of Jupiter Zeus, bringing us back to the original Iapetos connection. Since Iapetos is, quote, the piercer, and father of Prometheus, drawing a strong allegory to being the father of the pure divine spark within humanity that launches into martial energies of drive, willpower, fiery action, like I've just said, and expansion into multiple facets of life and expressed through civilization. The observations of Iapetos being the piercer and Tiwaz holding the spear as his weapon, as well as his rune looking similar to a spear point, Mars' symbol, one cannot help but to realize the image of male creative power, action, and fertility, all encompassed through multiple faces of the same shadowy Godhead. All the while, the ancient Atl tool, like I was just talking about, used by early humans as an expansion to their spear throwing, unironically looks similar to the symbol of Jupiter, furthering the depth of connection. I also forgot to mention Tuesday is named after Tyr Tivaz, and in Old Norse sources is described as the son of Odin. Tuesday is also looked at the god of darkness, the day of darkness. He is referenced by a 3rd century Latin inscription as Mars Thingsus. This reflects a strong association with the Germanic, quote, ting, or thing, Thing, which was a governing assembly in early Germanic society, made up of free people of the community, presided over by a law speaker. The Jupiter, Mars, Iapetos energies. We will now go to Jupiter Dolicanus and the Capitoline Triad. So we're skipping some timelines here, but you'll see why. Jupiter Dolicanus was a syncretic deity popular among Roman soldiers from 2nd to 3rd centuries CE. His cult combined Jupiter with the Luwian chief god Tarquin's Tarhunti, who is also every attribute of Jupiter. You know, bull, thunderbolt, you name it. In the Iron Age, there was also direct influence from Babylonian religion, especially in the way gods were depicted, i.e. Marutika equals Marduk, also Jupiter. Iconography shows Jupiter Dolicanus standing on a bull holding a thunderbolt and a double axe, putting emphasis on cosmic power, rulership, and fertility. The cult was mystery-based, which means the initiates had to undergo secret and occult rites layered in esoteric symbolism. Unfortunately, I can't find any official quote-unquote texts, regarding any of their rituals, the blood sacrifice, blood spilling in general. But shrines and art definitely show bulls and rams being sacrificed. In some tradition, the bull should be white when it is sacrificed. I find that quite unique and interesting. Blood is the life force and is the wine to the bread, symbolically. It is also seen as a medium for divine communication. This can be interpreted as sacrificing animals as a symbolic release of life to cosmic order, reaffirming Jupiter's dominion over life, fertility, and militaristic power. There was important emphasis on brotherhood/divine protection amongst the cult and soldiers. Blood spilling in this regard symbolizes shared risk, loyalty, and the offering and commitment of one's own lifeblood to Jupiter Dolicanus in battle, thus affirming that spilling blood is seen as divine consecration, vitality offered to the god. The Capitoline Triad consisted of Jupiter Optimus Maximus, Juno, queen of the gods, associated with the marriage, women, and the Roman state, Minerva, goddess of wisdom, crafts, and later war strategy. Minerva, Juno, Jupiter make the Capitoline Triad. This triad was formally established in the 6th century BCE. Their joint temple, the Temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus on Capitoline Hill, just like our Capitol Hill, became the most important religious site in Rome. I think I remember mentioning the only way a nation can have a capital is if it is blessed by the priests of Jupiter. However, this is not the only temple dedicated to Jupiter worship. This now turns to Jupiter Optimus Maximus Heliopolitanus. He was also a syncretic supreme god venerated at the great temple of Jupiter in Baalbek, now in modern-day Lebanon. The cult of Jupiter Heliopolitanus evolved from the ancient Canaanite religion from roughly the first 3 millennia BC, particularly the worship of the storm god/fertility god Baal-Hadad. Baal, meaning lord or master, was a title used for various local deities, while Hadad was specifically revered as the god of rain, thunder, and storms, closely linked to agricultural fertility and Jupiter. Over time, the cult of Baal-Hadad in Baalbek acquired solar characteristics, possibly due to the Hellenistic influences that equated Baal-Hadad with the Greek sun god Helios. This syncretism continued under Roman rule, with the deity further merging attributes with the Roman Jupiter, leading to the construction of a monumental temple dedicated to Jupiter Heliopolitanus in the 2nd century AD. He was often depicted holding a whip and thunderbolt. Modern scholarship largely identifies Baal with Hadad. According to the ancient Near East scholar Alberto R.W. Green, the worship of Hadad, the great storm god, emerged in Syria in the 2nd millennium BC. From his book titled The Storm God in the Ancient Near East from 2003. He gradually became known as Baal-Hadad and over time solely as Baal, becoming more associated with fertility. The German scholar Wolfgang Hermann suggested the name Baal, Lord, was adopted as a reverent alias when the cult of Hadad increased in importance and his true name became too sacred to speak allowed for anyone but the high priest. This practice parallels other cultures where substitute titles were used for deities whose names were considered too holy, as Bel was for Marduk, Jupiter to Babylon, Adonai for Yahweh. Other scholars propose that Baal was a native Canaanite deity whose cult was identified with or absorbed aspects of Hadad's. Regardless of their original relationship, by the first millennium BCE, Hadad and Baal were regarded as distinct deities, with Hadad being worshipped by the Aramaeans, and Baal by the Phoenicians and other Canaanites. So, how does this tie all together? Noah is the father of Japheth, who is directly aligned with Iapetos the piercer, and Yephet in Hebrew to expand or God enlarges. This symbolically links Noah, as myth suggests, to Uranus or Caelus in the Romans, basically the archetypal father of a new world. As his son, Iapetos Japheth expresses the Jupiterian or Promethean expansion that follows. Withstanding the chaotic waters of initiation into expansion, and piercing willpower to cling on to the valuables they, our long-distant ancestors, preserved on the quote-unquote ark throughout every cataclysm, the very essence of human spirit, the carrying of divine knowledge, is this preservation. This is the foremost encapsulated concept. This also includes people saving their animals, their seeds, their belongings to then continue in a new world. And I mean, this is as much macro and to micro. This can work on an entire nation of people or an individual. It is initiation, whether we like it or not. Look at a side note, look at the Palestine-Israel situation now and how that was a giant sacrifice. It was a giant blood sacrifice. Spilling that blood, consecrating that ground, and then reinitiating them into this new world. Even Marco Rubio said there are people coming out of the darkness into light for the first time in 2 years, and that is very Masonic. That is very symbolic of initiation and everything we are seeing right here within this story, this biblical narrative.
Actions you have taken unrelated to this and because of who you are and what you've done and how you're viewed. And this weekend, because of that, at some point very soon, we are going to see 20 living human beings emerge from the darkness into the light for the first time in 2 years. And that is because not only were you used the credibility and the power and the prestige of this office and the relationships you created, and you committed yourself to making it happen. And I think it will go down as a historic moment in the history of our country, and something our country should be very proud of.
Symbolically, this piercing marks spirit into matter. The moment the light illuminates the darkness, and the imagery of cosmic wounding or sacrifice ever present within the conceptual archetypal energies we have discussed. It is indeed through Iapetos's, Jupiter's, Japheth's, Yahweh's piercing, bolting expansion that allows conscious foresight, and the creative rupture that allows awareness, life, or advancement to gain form. From spirit to matter. As above, so below. As within, so without. It is all alchemy. It is all initiation. As I've said, your birth, everybody's birth is an initiation. From the waters and dormancy of spirit into harsh material being. And that spirit continues to express multidimensionally through matter and being itself. This piercing can also be echoed as the, quote, spear of Longinus, which pierced the side of Christ during his crucifixion, linking the Christ-Noah story. This is an esoteric expression, As we know, he was stabbed in the side by the spear itself. Blood and water flowed from this side, as it says in the Bible. This is an expression esoterically as purely blood and water flowing from his side is the moment the veil symbolically between heaven and earth is torn, between spirit and matter. The wound becomes the portal of divine life flowing into creation. Water is the receptive matrix, the lunar and emotion. Blood is the fiery solar life force. This is an alchemical transmutation symbolizing the union of opposites, transmuting mortal life to spiritual vitality. The piercing shows divine will releasing cosmic waters. Thus, the divine will piercing the formless is the best summary for all of this. From here we can conclude, Iapetos Japheth is the archetypal piercer, the separator of spirit and matter. Zeus Jupiter is the cosmic lightning of divine order and expansive will. Prometheus is the inner spear wound of intellect suffering for knowledge. Christ's piercing, union of solar and lunar, spirit manifesting through matter. The initiate's wound, personal integration, transformation through inner revelation and sacrifice. All these operations under one multi-dimensional Godhead. Man. So basically, this is the one, going, basically expanding, becoming many things, and eventually getting back to the singularity. Pyramids all embody this too, man, from duality, singularity, Basically, creation, order, incarnation, renewal, and transcendence. And that is the Ouroboros of this reality and realm. And if you really think about it, these are all the faces. Like Janus, the multi-faced God, these are all the faces of the trans-dimensional, multi-dimensional, whatever you want to call it, interdimensional, multi-faced Godhead. The Merkaba. If you watched my psychedelic video from my previous release, you'll remember that I talked about seeing this vision of the Merkaba vibrational stone going in and out of itself simultaneously, kind of like a toroidal field. But to really basically sum it up, the hidden principle goes to the will that divides and organizes, to the mediator that descends, and to the redeemer that reunites the entire concept. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. This was very, very detailed and one of the most captivating stories of humanity I've probably ever read. And diving into the history and etymology of everything really capped it off. So, hope y'all enjoyed this. Like, share, and subscribe. I'll see y'all on the next one. I'm going to take a break. Take care.